I'm Bernie Martin Beck, and I'm just fascinated by history. This is a newspaper I've not seen since 1950, 55?
Yes.
And thanks for bringing it in. My guest is
Jim Walstrom.
Jim. You know a lot about newspapers.
Yes, I was raised in it.
You got ink underneath your fingernails?
Probably. Clean this week.
Ink? How come? What was the family connection with the newspaper?
Well, my father actually went into the newspaper game or printing game when he was a young man. And then in 1948, he bought the Grants Pass Bulletin paper and commercial printing shop. And and I was raised in it. We ran around the shop when I was little, like we were in 3, 4, 5 years old.
Yeah.
And then
by the time you were 10, you were doing real work, I'll bet.
Yeah, we used to get paid for sweeping the floors, taking out the garbage.
Yeah, I know that. I did that at Martin Studebaker.
Uh-huh.
Well, this picture, this particular bulletin that you brought, shows the duck pond, or it was a wading pool because the Rogue River was pretty fast for us kids to learn to swim in.
Right, you couldn't really go to the river, there was no swimming pools. And the wading pool was on the Park Street side of the park, City Park, and that's where all the little kids used to play.
And I remember polio shut down some of that, and we couldn't do it. So then we ride our bikes in that oval, and still loved it. Here's an ad that really interested me. Benefits every home in Grants Pass area. Fir plywood. Look at that. How, the lumbering was so important.
Yes, it was.
And plywood was such a boon to building after the war. You've gotten involved in all kinds of things besides printing newspapers, and this ended in what,
1970 discontinued the newspaper because basically we were taking 90% of our time to produce 10% of the income, and commercial printing was 90% of the income and 10% of the effort, so we decided that didn't pencil out.
I remember seeing my dad's byline or under so many of your photographs.
Right.
He just got a kick out of taking good pictures. These are what we now call pom-pom girls. I don't know who they...
Cheerleaders.
Cheerleaders. Different costumes by a long shot.
Right. The skirts are quite long, lengthy.
And the sweaters and all. It was winter time by all means. Somehow there are other ways that your family and our family connect. And Otto Martin News just happens to be one of them.
Right. We did this for Henry. I don't exactly remember how many years we did it, but it was a number of years. We produced this on either a monthly or quarterly basis.
Otto Martin.
And they used the 1881 car with the guy in it. And that was the logo for the dealership.
Otto Martin News. And you did more stuff for him. A Taste of Spätzle. This was about
70s? I'm trying to think when this was.
And they took tour groups to pick up new cars in Europe. And this would be a guide. The people would stay together for 1 week, and then they'd go on their own. And I was lucky enough to go on a couple of them. You learned lots about Martin Luther. That was one of the privileges. And you'd go to these romantic hotels, which were part of Europe, part of family tradition, I guess you'd call it, that then the cars would be shipped back.
Right.
That was about my family, but I want to learn about your family. Who are we talking about here?
Well, this is myself, my older daughter Jamie, my wife Carolyn, and my younger daughter Carrie. And the only difference between this photo and a lot of it now is that the hair color of Carolyn's is not exactly what it is now.
Well, I guess yours is just about the same.
Yeah. And then, go ahead.
Now you've got 2 daughters.
Right.
And I've met them in the business.
Yeah.
Today,
Jamie
was in there loaning me the ugly caveman, as we sometimes call him. These were given to donors who, in the center of Grants Pass, right at the Chamber of Commerce, is a huge one of these. The Grants Pass caveman is a really, it's about Oregon caves, and I bet a lot of you can remember parades where they'd come in.
Right. There used to be an organization, I don't know if it exists anymore, but each of the donors paid, I don't remember exactly how much for the statue, which was several $100s, and then that went to build the one that's up by the chamber, the entrance of town.
Sure, so they come right in on off I-5 on
But
exit
there was always
50.
one discussion about this. Why did we not have the friendly caveman as opposed to the ugly caveman, call
Yes,
it?
yeah. I know, I like the friendly caveman a lot more. They used to play in the parades, and they'd come and grab people and put them in jail, and they'd go to the Rose Parade, and they'd go to San Francisco, the opening of the Golden Gate Bridge.
Right. They'd have dignitaries here and have them drink tiger's blood.
Yeah.
And then eat, forgot what kind of meat, raw meat.
Tiger's blood just had a lot of Tabasco and the tomato sauce. I think I
right.
heard the recipe. Yeah. Now, who is this?
Well, this is my son and his family.
And where do they live?
They live in Tigard, and this picture was taken when he's in the National Guard, and his job at the time was a liaison between the Oregon Guard and the Hawaiian Guard. So he was in Hawaii at the time about 4 times a year. He'd spend time there.
Because we're talking this guy.
Yeah, this is Eric again, and this is during his 11-month tour of duty in Iraq. He was a captain there, and he was actually a troop commander, because his troop was called F Troop, which, if you know the old TV sitcom, in the Cav unit, and they were Oregon National Guard, and they were out of Newburgh.
Well, I know where many a prayer went up for this guy and this troop. And
the one thing about that is, a year before that, he was stationed with actually the Grants Pass and Medford Guard unit in the Sinai Peninsula for 9 months. And one of the neat things, he got to climb Mount Sinai.
Oh.
And I have a bunch of photos that he took on a CD somewhere during that tour.
Well, now this is what you've done as a family picture.
Yeah, this is the family brood, I guess you call it. There's 8 grandchildren, and from my 2 daughters and my son. My the two girls here are the first, were born January 1st, 2000. They were millennium babies, and they were 3 months premature, but they were first babies born in Orange County.
Oh my! And they're good, strong, healthy looking girls.
Yes, they're actually, yeah, they're 12 now.
I want to brag a little bit about what this guy has helped me do. I wanted a family picture, and of course we never had our family all together.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, if I get a little picture of great-grandma and a little picture of great-grandpa,
Mm-hmm.
and if I get a wedding picture of the parents, and then pictures of us, and then our kids, but we have one who passed away before the picture was taken, one born afterwards. Could you put this all together?
Mm-hmm.
And talk about a labor of love. This has been such an incredible gift, and I'll share it. I wished I knew more of those greats and pictures of those, but at least I know where they fit in and where I fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And our, the wedding pictures and such. This is one of my aims, is to get people to talk about their family history, put down as much as they can, dialogue, videotape, get out the camera, make copies, because I'm just thrilled that you could bring all this for us today.
Uh-huh. Sure, not a problem.
This one's a shocker.
Yeah, if that was the flood of 1955 when the railroad bridge was washed out, which is the old O&C railroad. And this
went to no place?
That went to no place. It actually went to, I believe, Wilderville.
But it was supposed to go to Crescent City.
Yes, and it never made it over.
Crescent City never built their half of it.
Mm-hmm.
And this was to take lumber over to the ships that would take it to the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this actually, where this is now is almost directly where the Parkway Bridge is now that we have.
And
I can tell you that we used to swim there by the railroad bridge a lot. And where the water is now is probably 25 feet below that in normal conditions. And we used to, some people dove off the bridge. I jumped off once.
And lived to tell the story.
Lived, because right below where the main span of this bridge is, the water is about 30 feet deep. So you had plenty of water, but there have been people that have jumped off and hit rocks, and that was their last jumps.
Mm.
But
well, this same bridge, some mean boy, next door neighbor, said that his sister and my sister Sharon and I had to walk across this bridge. Of course, it was in better shape than this, but not a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
And there were boards missing.
Right.
And I was terrified, and I didn't want to do it, and I cried. Why couldn't I have just said no? Why couldn't the three of us beat him up? Oh, I wished I'd have grown up a lot earlier.
Yeah, we used to go. Do you remember do you know of the swinging bridge on the Illinois?
Tell me about it. Yes,
I have a video of it. My dad had, and it shows him. We used to go out in the middle and swing, because it was suspension footbridge that went across the Illinois River, and it was probably 30 feet, 40 feet above the river, and we used to go out there and swing in it. In this video I have that I don't know who took it, but my dad's sitting there swinging it with me on it, and I'm trying to walk across it, and those were interesting times.
Oh, the fun we had before TV.
Right.
Because there is a little swinging bridge in Palmerton Park in Rogue River. And Palmerton Park is an arboretum. I encourage all of you to check it out. Arboretum, that designation means that they have trees from all over that are identified, and it's on both sides of that creek.
Across Evans Creek.
Yeah, and not far from town. If you're out, and in that same community is a wonderful museum. Every little town seems to have a museum. I was in one over in Jackson County, just happened to find it. Have been over in Coos County. I kind of seek them out. Find out what people have saved and what they're so proud of. Like you saving this. Somebody else might have said, oh, that's scrap metal.
Right.
But to you?
Yeah, it's just a little memory.
Worth a fortune.
Yeah.
What's it like to have been in one town growing up? What's it been like to be a son of a famous father, an honorable businessman? What would you say to dads nowadays?
That's a good question. I had a lot kind of lost for words, trying to figure out what dads is just, try to be the best you can, keep the Lord in your life.
Yeah, you've always held your head high. Your father had held his head high. Not that they're perfect people, but they aren't. They are what the warp and woof of America is about. Hard work, God and country.
There's one thing when you say that hard work. My dad used to work a lot in the evening. And when I was really young, I don't exactly remember when, but I used to go down in the evening, and he'd go back to work at 9 o'clock and work until about midnight to get job work and the paper put to bed and everything. And at midnight, the city policeman would come by, pick him up, and they go out to Larry's or Herb's La Casita now and have coffee or a piece of pie. And I used to occasionally get to go down and go with them and sit with there'd be either one or two police officers, because that's all that were on duty at in those times. But they'd pick us up, give us a ride, and in the police car, and we'd go out there, and they'd have lunch or dinner, whatever the policemen were doing at that time on their shift.
Do you remember that there was a light in the middle of the street that said the police should check in because they didn't have
Right.
handy talkies?
That's right, the red lights. Or I believe it was, yeah.
We got to go to visit the jail, the county jail, when there were there was not one a person in jail. And so the sheriff said, sure, bring the kids down. And they can go into jail and we can lock them up if you'd like. I was perfectly happy with it until they said, lock it up.
Right.
No.
You turned around on that.
It was. The privilege that I have held policemen in, sheriff, state police, I believe came from that kind of childhood memories. And you? That they were there as your friend.
Right.
They'd do you no harm. They were the ones, if you were a kid, you could call on them.
Yeah, there were a lot of times when I was a little older and had a car, we had, where Larry's Drive-In moved to where C&G on Park Street between 6th and 7th, the policemen that were on duty at that time would come by and just talk to us and because they weren't a whole lot older than we were, and some of those guys were in their 20s, and so that we talked to them and they related, and they told us to stay out of trouble.
They did. It's neat because the kids, any kids, you can make arrangements to go to the fire station in your town or take the kids to the to meet these people. It builds into them a trust, a security that maybe they wouldn't have if you weren't building those bridges. We've got a couple more minutes yet, and I want to find out, would you live anyplace else if you had your chance?
Not really, because basically Western Oregon is I've lived in Eugene, and my kids have lived in Portland area, and if I was going to move out of this area, the biggest city I would ever want to go to is Portland, but now we've even talked, Carolyn and I've talked about moving out of here because there's getting to be too many people here.
Oh.
It used to be on Sunday afternoon, you could drive up and down 6th Street and not see a car moving hardly.
Well, yeah, that was when people had one car, and now that we have three cars.
No, I wouldn't. This is climate-wise. The only thing that we have a fear, if you're going to have a fear of something, it would be flooding, and basically the people that are too low now are the only ones that are going to be flooded. But a lot of other places, you got hurricanes, tornadoes, violent weather, and it's just Southern Oregon is so mild. Right,
and all of Southern Oregon, we offer some. It's the climate, the sign says over it. And if this sounds like an ad for the Chamber of Commerce, they're not paying us. But You've got the roads. You've got the one that goes to the coast, Highway 199. You've got the road that goes from Canada to Mexico, I-5. Then 99's the old road that takes you through the backcountry. And then you can go on to as many little back roads, Oregon Caves. It's an hour-and-a-half's drive?
Yeah, not quite, I don't think, but it's close.
Crater Lake, Diamond Lake, the California coast.
So many natural, beautiful.
Natural wonders, yeah. So next time you're thinking about packing up, and stop in Grants Pass and check out Better Life TV. This started with a couple of guys. Delmer Wagner had some knowledge of ham radio, and he knew electronics. It was his business. And he knew that it could you know, we could have a signal going out. And then there was Bob Heisler, who had his ham license and knew more about doing things with networking. And those two guys just put their heads together and said, we can do it here. Well, now it's not only in Washington, Nevada, California, Oregon, and online. So if you want to look at any of these old shows, you go to betterlifetv.tv and dial down to Journeys and Journals or whatever show you want to watch. And there it is.
It's wonderful.
Can you believe the techie country, the world we live in?
Yeah, well, it's amazing because the communications is so instant. Everything is not taken any time at all to find something.
And this was the way mail was delivered back then, right?
Right, on the river. They had mail boats.
And if you wanted groceries, you'd send the order to Gold Beach, and they'd bring it up the river.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine how often or how wet.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That's how it came. We're just lucky. A lifetime on the road.
Yeah, the Glenn Woolridge story, it's a wonderful story.
Thanks very much for tuning in, and thank you so much for being my guest.
You bet, Bernie.
We invite you all to share the good things we've enjoyed all our lives.
Yes, it is wonderful.